Greetings again, and welcome back to Dark Souls 3. This time around we will be heading to the first proper gameplay area. So far everything has been tutorial or hub. Now unfortunately it's not like in Dark Souls 1 where you just kind of walk there, which was also how it was in Dark Souls 2, but instead it's more of a Demon Souls approach to things where we just kind of warp to the place that we want to go to, from this bonfire. Though in Demon Souls we actually had to walk to 5 different archstones that were located in the hub. Not so much here. But yeah, we're here now. This looks suspiciously like a Lord vessel. That one thing in the tutorial area also looked like it. A bit, only was bigger. And this is already Anolondo levels of nice view. And it's only the first area of the game. Quite a way to start things if you ask me. It's not like there hasn't been anything to see in previous Souls games. The landscapes have always been pretty. Or in other ways interesting. I mean, that's just kind of morbid what we see right here, like corpses impaled on trees. Sure, let's go with that. And this is only one path we can go. We can see quite a few hollows down there. That might scare you off a bit, but let's deal with them later. And so I'd go down here. Now we could take the stairs, we just walked past him. But then you couldn't take care of that guy. Not as easily anyway. And oh my god, dogs. Do I have to tell you how much I hate dogs in Souls games? I mean, they're really easy actually as long as you have a shield. But sometimes they just kind of attack past you and hit you anyway. Which is weird. But maybe that's only happened to me. But yeah, as long as you just block their first attack and then attack them, you're fine. The problem is that right now we're still using the mace, which knocks out dogs rather far back. I think any weapon with high enough poise damage will do that. I plan on switching from it rather soon anyway, because I don't like its moveset. Damage output is alright. In Dark Souls 2 it was outright broken. I haven't really heard anything too good about it yet regarding Dark Souls 3. But I'd say it's still a solid weapon, I just really don't like the moveset. Alright then, up here we have us a little of a tough situation. There's some guy shooting arrows. And if you have a chance to take out a ranger, it's a good idea and... well... yeah, okay. Those guys are actually kind of tougher than Udix Gundia's second form, I think. But you can beat them much the same way by just getting behind them. And if you inflict fire damage of any kind to them, be it with a firebomb or torch, they will just kind of flail around for a bit, like right now, and be stunned for a second or two. Which will give you a good chance to attack them some more. Dogs will actually do the same thing, except they will be knocked back if you hit them with a high enough poise damage weapon, but if you hit them with any fire damage, even if it's a torch, they will just kind of fly back and just kind of try to put the fire out on the ground. And it's actually worth it to come up here even if you don't want to use a bow for offensive purposes, because you can use it and shoot pretty far, even without having the sufficient stats to wield it. The thing is, you might want to use it to actually pull enemies one by one from time to time. It's pretty useful. And we could have actually killed that, I'm just gonna call him Abyss Hollow for now. You can actually kill him before he transforms. That way you won't have to fight him. But you also won't get the rewards for fighting him, like you get some Titanite from that one. Which is very welcome actually. Because Titanite in the earlier game of Dark Souls 3 is much rarer than it was in the previous Souls games. In Dark Souls 1 and 2 you could pretty much just find enough to upgrade more than just one weapon to, well, the max level of its tier. In Dark Souls 3 you also get more than you need, but it's still a bit rarer, I feel. And that guy we just killed, actually a pretty tough enemy. he hits quite hard, so just watch out for that. And they had to draw him up, because I couldn't have fought him down there, of course, but I knew that guy was down there. And, of course, it's not even progress. It's just a shortcut. For later. So we'll be back. So now let's check out that other path we previously ignored. But since we used quite a bit of Estus, we can just replenish it now. We have 4 flasks back now. And this situation is a bit less daunting than it first appears, because all you're gonna do is just run. And kill that asshole. You heard him kind of starting up a scream. If he had finished that, he would have woken up or aggroed all of those other guys. And this place would have been a little bit more tough. Now those hollows that are just kind of there praying, they're not too tough anyway, but in numbers and in combination with other enemies, they can be very dangerous. And again, one of those guys. Now here the enemies are actually much more dangerous. See those guys that kind of glow orange? Yeah, they're usually guys that actually have weapons. So they first tried to teach us that that guy will just scream and wake everybody up by just pitting us against relatively weak enemies. And then they try to do the same again, only this time it's for real. And up here we got the binoculars. Unfortunately they are not an equipable weapon anymore, so you can't use them to aim spells. They function much the same as the bow though, I mean, look at that. Only it can't shoot arrows. Which is why I didn't pull them out to show you. The only difference is that the binoculars don't have a crosshair in the middle. But if you just want to look into the distance, you can just use the bow, or the crossbow for that matter, that you have equipped. Just to zoom in a little bit as well. Gold pine resin we just picked up is a very nice item. It allows us to apply a lightning buff to our weapon. And especially this early in the game, this is incredibly powerful. I mean, you're encouraged to just try it maybe against the boss, where the difference is just really noticeable. Because the health bar is bigger, and, you know, if you take a big chunk off of it, that always feels great. And I hope we don't have to deal with that, because there's quite a few enemies there. Oh, there's a ladder here, by the way, but we're too cool for ladders. And in the network test of this game, there was actually kind of a tombstone down here that had a bit of lore in it. I'm not gonna talk too much about it, though, because it doesn't really tell that much. It's just supposed to be a little bit of an interesting bit for the network test, I suppose. Which I did not participate in, by the way, just to be clear here. Okay, so at this point I decided to just run through here. This was a very spontaneous decision. But I did know that we would get visits from a friend. And just, you know, to be able to get something a bit earlier without much of a hassle, you know, I decided to do that, because that's definitely the way you can do things. Now what we saw out there was actually a dragon, or rather dragons are technically extinct, so Dark Souls calls them drakes instead. Oh wait, they're not even drakes, they're wyverns, or you could call them wyverns if you want to be weird. We're gonna see them later though, don't worry. We already saw a dead one anyway, so it's not too much that we missed. So let's check out that chest. The chain is not curled back, for one. And in Dark Souls 1 that meant it was a mimic. But you could also see it breathe sometimes. Just open its lid to let some air in. The other way that you can of course spot a mimic is to use Aloyd's Talisman, or an Undead Hunter Charm as this game calls it, but we don't have any. And then there's just plain old hitting it. And if you don't have any time for this bullshit, just hit every chest ever, because unlike Dark Souls 2, you can't actually break chests by hitting them, so it's totally safe. Now this Mimic here is actually quite scary, because one hit will actually probably kill us or bring us near death. At this point in the game at least, and even later they're still very powerful. Thankfully, they're pretty easy to take care of. They have these same moves as in Dark Souls 1, so just circle around them, stay close. Don't be hit by their grab. You'll be able to spot it though, and if you just circle around it, the grab won't hit you. Same's true for pretty much all of its attacks actually. Just to be safe, you might sometimes just want to dodge roll to avoid something that might hit you. And this is a very nice weapon that we got as a reward. It's a deep axe. A deep battle axe rather. The deep infusion that this axe has, which we could also apply to a weapon if you have the right materials and give it to Andre, is actually quite nice. It adds a bit of dark damage. Doesn't have scaling though, which this early in the game is not a problem at all. And just taking out those guys because I know that there's a very tough opponent here. That guy. This is a Lothric Knight. I'll even buff my axe. This is the weapon's special skill, which is pretty useful. I accidentally applied it twice though and it doesn't stack. Now we do a bit more damage. But yes, those guys are pretty tough for how early they appear in the game. They even have a counter to the old strafed right to win technique, which is just a shield bash that's incredibly fast. But they're actually much easier than they first appear, because there's a lot of opportunities to attack them. It's just that you first have to, you know, attack them, and know when to attack them for that matter. You could also break their block, of course, by kicking, or you can use the weapon skill of the straight swords, which have a special stance, and one of the attacks actually breaks the opponent's guard as well. It's very useful because it has a wider range than the kick, and it's easier to execute too, because the kick can be a bit finicky, and I often accidentally execute it in the middle of a regular weapon combo too, which is quite annoying when it happens. And I'm fairly sure it will happen. But anyway, we're back here, and this is actually the way we've come from, is the way we should have gone through originally. Because up here, the fire lingers for a bit and will actually damage us, so it's not that easy to get through, though you totally can. As much as you totally can shoot that guy with arrows and kill him, or rather, well, we'll do that later I guess. But right now we don't really have enough arrows, and we don't do enough damage either because we don't really meet these stat requirements for the bow. And without these stat requirements we would need a lot of arrows. Because right now, well, we can only carry 99 arrows of each type, and we don't have that many. Alright, a raw gem. This will allow us to infuse our weapon with the raw infusion. It's quite useful actually, especially in this game, because you can apply it right from the start of the game pretty much. Essentially, it gets rid of the weapon scaling, but instead it increases the base damage. Now this infusion has been useful even in Dark Souls 1, where people said it was completely useless. The thing is, it was just well, less useful in here anyway, but as long as it's very low stats for the scaling of a weapon, you could just use raw and just up your damage output for a bit. It depended on the weapon too, whether it was useful or not. But it had its uses, despite what some people claim. And we've actually entered the second half of this area just now. Well, the game doesn't clearly label this as first half, second half, but I like to think of this as second half of the area. If you just go along the main path, the area is incredibly short actually, but there's a lot to discover and well, small nooks and crannies. There's a couple side paths. In fact, we've already seen a few of those. In general, the areas of this game have a bit of a bigger scope, but that doesn't mean that the content is spread thin. There's still a lot to discover. The content density has always been a big strength of the Souls games, and I'm glad that this game doesn't disappoint either, because you know, bigger areas had me worried a bit at first. And every encounter feels unique. That's another thing I really like about the Souls games. I could probably still walk you through the Undead Burg of Dark Souls 1 despite not having played the game in years. And yeah, this room is a trap in case you couldn't spot it. Whenever you see barrels that look like they could explode, this probably means that someone's gonna blow them up. And that one better be you. And I don't know what that guy did. He doesn't usually attack the wall. Just this time he was had an off day, I guess. And the Mail Breaker is quite a mediocre weapon. It's a dagger type, attacks really fast but does less damage than most other weapons. The Sorcerer starts with it. Now sadly we can't rescue our little prisoner friend right now, so we'll have to come back here later with the key. In fact, let's make that the next point in our agenda for today. Because I know where the key is. It's fairly close by, but getting to it is quite a handful actually, so yeah, it's gonna take us a bit longer than just a minute. And I just looked to the right there, there's something that you should be able to see there, some hands reaching up. Which is also why I didn't run up to that guy to kill him, because that guy would have ambushed us. If you know it's coming, if you can spot like some hands just reaching up, just run up to them and hit him. It'll instantly kill that enemy. And that one guy I'm just zooming in on is actually one of those Abyss Hollows. And much like the first one, if you know that he's gonna transform, you can kill him before he transforms. Which of course won't get you the rewards for it, which is usually some Titanite. But I want Titanite. So I'm gonna fight him. And the thing is that as long as you have fire damage, like for instance fire bombs, they're not too tough. Because a fire bomb will just straight up stun them for like a second or three. The thing is, the footing here is not quite to your advantage, though you could use it to your advantage. I would say that the lower ground has the advantage here. But that kind of depends. As long as you can be behind it, you're generally better off than worrying about where you are on the height here. You can also fall off here, of course, but that's dumb. I mean, who would ever fall off here? Certainly not me, that's never happened to me. It never happened anyway. Alright then, so let's do this the easy way. I think when he transforms, he's also resistant to dark, which is the damage type that a weapon does. In addition to physical, but still, if he's resistant to it, we're gonna notice it. And right around here is our first crystal lizard. They pretty much always drop some nice Titanite. This one only drops draw gems though, which also drop from regular enemies in this area. Although it's a rare drop, you'll always get one from him. And yeah, once we die, we leave behind our bloodstain, and we have to pick it back up. If we die again, it's lost forever, and we don't get our souls back. It's generally not that big of a deal. You'll be able to get your souls back in most cases. Because you're supposed to learn from your mistakes, not make them twice. But if you do, you know, don't worry about it too much. And this enemy is actually supposed to guide us down that path, which is the short route through the level. But we're not gonna go the short way. Not today. We will meet up back down where the ladder is later though. For now, let's go down here, because it said we want that key to open the cell. And to get that, we have to go down that way. And the first time I played through this area, I just completely missed this part, to be honest. Even though it's set up so you first see the door into that room there, and then you see that hollow just shooting arrows at you from behind. It's just I never quite did that. Sometimes the design, as clever as it is, just doesn't work. And here's some Undead Hunter charms. I talked about them before. They are essentially Lloyd's Talisman from Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 2. If you hit an enemy with it, they can't use S's anymore. And if you hit a mimic with it, well, it'll just open up and you can grab its treasure. It actually is Lloyd's Talisman, by the way. The thing is that nobody can remember the name of Lloyd anymore. Not that he was important or anything. That's actually a nice message. Because if you don't look around carefully anyway, this guy might surprise you. He does glow a bit in the dark though, which makes things harder for him. And here we get the broadsword. It is a straight sword type weapon. It does not have a thrust attack though, so I'm not a big fan of it. If I'm using a straight sword, I prefer the ones that have slashes and thrusts combined. Like almost all of them. It's just that the broadsword doesn't have it. It's still a pretty good weapon though. It has the regular swing flurry by just mashing R1 or the light attack button. Which every sword has as well. And the green blossoms that I found here, they pretty much speed up our stamina regeneration a bit. And I can't resist rolling through stuff. Now down here, we actually find something of course, but it's also a good way to just ambush enemies. From up here, if you have range attacks. And this Toro straight sword is another good weapon actually, another straight sword. It's one of the kind that I like. We might use it later. Anyway, from here we have a good look over the area, so we can just pick our time carefully to attack. There's actually more enemies than you might first believe. The problem is that quite a few of them are actually directly under us, but you can play around a bit with explosive barrels. And you can just wait for the right moment to do the plunging attack. I kind of prefer not fighting more than just one enemy at the same time. At least if that's possible. Right now it doesn't seem to be possible, so... Well, I guess let's just do the dangerous thing. Now I did not expect that. So I completely forgot taking out those guys, because that one guy we're about to face here, let's just say that he threw a firebomb at the explosive barrels next to the stairs as I was walking up them. That killed me. But at least that means I don't miss this chest, which has a very valuable item in it. It has a shield with a 100% physical block. Now, you don't need one that has a 100% physical block, but it's actually quite nice, because now you can block without taking any damage. Most of the time, at least. I mean, sometimes your god will just be broken, it's not strong enough, and you'll take damage anyway. It's not like attacks will go right through your shield, though. First, you'll kind of stagger back, and then they just have an opportunity to just hit you really hard. But yeah, what I actually find much easier than what I tried before. You can still see my souls up there, by the way. I need to get them later. But yeah, what I actually find much easier is to just go and hide here by these stairs. Just to make sure that these explosive barrels don't explode me. Much like I said before, if there's explosive barrels around, you better be the one to blow them up. Now this time we're a bit luckier. Last time we would have had to fight at least 2 guys at once. This time I could spread it out a bit better. Or rather, we could have also fought them a bit more elegantly last time, but let's just say that I just decided to not be patient at all. Because that's already the last guy. Well, except that dog down there. Thankfully, he's easy to take care of because he just stares at this corpse, which has the cell key, which is what we came here for. But this is not the only thing that we can find here that's very valuable. I mean, check this out, a Titanite shard. But more importantly, right here on this anvil, you can find an Estus shard, or rather it's a table I suppose, not an anvil. Anyway, here's my souls back. And now we are back in that room that we could just look at earlier, where we saw that big guy patrolling. And why I healed there, I have no idea. I must have forgot to switch my weapons. And I completely forgot about that guy, to be honest. Every time I drop down here, I'm so keen on just remembering that he's here. But I always forget. And we actually get the rapier here. A thrusting sword. Thrusting swords are very good weapons in general. At least I like them a lot. They have a high DPS output. Because you can just thrust and thrust and thrust and thrust. Let's ignore that big guy for now. And go here instead. Because this is actually the part that we would have come to if we went down that ladder earlier. Let's just go up to it to, you know, prove it, because I don't want you to think that I'm a liar. Unfortunately, this already activates the ambush as I walk up, but thankfully, it also allows us to ambush them for once. Yep, this is back here. So let's continue on to progress. As you can tell, if we had just gone that way, we would have had a much easier time going through the area. But there's a very valuable treasure in that side area. So we're actually quite encouraged to explore a lot in this game. Now this guy. He has quite some moves. Those aren't even the moves I'm talking about. I'm pretty confident we'll see what he has in store for us. Thankfully looked away when he did his spin to win attack. But we can't miss this, holy shit. I hate this because it's kind of random. All you can really do is just dodge away. If you're unlucky, something might hit you during a moment when you're not iframed from a dodge roll. Because you only have so many iframes during a dodge. And this is actually the final room of this area. But first off, we want to go somewhere else. Because you do remember, right from the beginning of the area, there was this locked door that could only be opened from one side. Of course, we still want to go there. What you also could do in this room, by the way, is to just drop down the enemy. If you come from the other side, you can plunge attack him here. If you're patient enough, or your route just syncs up to his, at least. Yeah, this room looks deceivingly easy. You should know something's up. Thankfully, you could take out half that ambush before it ambushed us. But even if you have to deal with all four at the same time, they are the weakest enemies they can find in this area. Most weapons will take them out in 1 or 2 hits. So don't worry too much if you know, happen to have to deal with all of them at once. The one that can be problematic is the 5th guy who's there from the start. But you'll usually have enough time to kill him before the others actually go up. Ah, that guy again. We're in familiar territory now. Let's just ignore that enemy. All I want now is the warmth of a bonfire. To rest for a bit. So I'm not even gonna take care of those dogs. Because fuck them. Oh well, what's this? We cannot rest yet because there's an enemy nearby. I guess we'll have to put them down anyway. You could still light a bonfire if there's enemies around, but for now, I think we'll take a break. Next time we'll explore the remainder of this area and of course fight a boss. See ya then.